Hi there, this is Jason. As you can see, we are deep, we're in the depths of Articulate Storyline here. This is the interface for Articulate Storyline. I'm sort of about a third of the way through designing a new resource or a new um, online learning activity using this tool. And this one's kind of interesting to demonstrate and talk about a bit on three sort of areas in terms of three sort of areas. One is just that basic idea of going from a paper-based or mainly paper-based resource to something that's more dynamic and online. But the other two are probably bigger, and that is one is this idea of discovery learning. It's an often talked about principle of effective learning. Actually noticing what you know or starting from the point of what you do know, making guesses, experimenting, taking risks, and then actually noticing that gap between what you know now and what it is you could be learning, and actually sort of developing through a process your own learning through discovery learning. Now, I think a lot of people get the impression that with a pre-programmed resource that discovery learning is always going to be limited. I would beg to differ there, especially with some of the really cool things we can do with this software. And I'm going to show that to you. The other one is the language and the literacy support. Language and literacy is supposed to be, well, in my sector anyway, in the vet sector, it's supposed to be integrated and embedded in almost everything that happens in the vet sector. But in my experience, you know, well, it's pretty much there's a lot of lip service paid to that idea of supporting the language and the literacy and the numeracy, and that's not because people just don't care. I think it's just they're just not really that sure or don't know how they could be doing that. And in an online resource, it's interesting to look at some of the little ways and tools and methods you can support the level of the language level, and help them develop that language level, while they're learning content-based activities. So I'm going to just sort of, well, I'll show you what I started with, and this is sort of a colleague came to me with a fit for work. Which is a sort of a PE as well as a getting fit for the workplace in the hard trades area, and what this is quite similar to what it was he showed me. It was basically a table, and it had 9 aspects of fitness. The learners were asked to have a guess at what they thought they meant. Then they were asked to watch a PowerPoint either in class with the teacher and later, as this teacher became better at using things like Moodle, they were able to actually just go and access the PowerPoint in Moodle and then go back in and fill the rest of their sheet and put the definitions from the presentation in alongside there in that column there. And the idea was that they could look at what they at first thought that term meant and then look at a more technical explanation. And then they could compare. So look, on paper, as we say, it's actually there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. In fact, it's a good a method. But understandably, my colleague wanted to make it a lot better, and not only make it look better and operate a lot better, but actually get a better result, not just in terms of the discovery learning, but also from the literacy and the language development. So let's see what we came up with. Rather than having a paper-based thing like this, this really does require a teacher on hand. It really does need a teacher to be able to guide them. The definitions from the presentation are very technical. Luckily, this teacher is very, very good at making them very clear and very simple. But let's say he's not there, to what degree could the learners engage with this on their own? And that was something I was interested in exploring. So let's go and have a look at Articulate. As you can see here, these are the slides I've done so far for this resource. What I've started by doing is, this is the front page here, and I've just made a bit of an effort to make it a little bit stylish, a little bit cool. This is actually a video that floats out of some people jogging. It makes this point of these are aspects of fitness. We want you to discover what you already know, but then we want to extend that knowledge. We do want to extend their knowledge in terms of the aspects of fitness, but we also want to extend their knowledge of vocabulary and technical terms. So they work their way through that. I'm actually going to play the resource a little bit later so you can see what it looks like live. We're in the design interface at the moment. So that's basically the title page. Now, where one of the things I am doing very differently right from the start is rather than getting them to sort of blindly write down what they think these terms mean, I've started with something a lot more visual. And I've actually put in some pictures that those 9 terms could be pegged to. And it's a discovery activity all by itself because they have as many attempts as they like to put these labels on the right pictures. And what I want to do is from the start create something a bit visual in their mind rather than getting lost in the text. So in this little activity they actually try and put these labels on the right pictures, and some of these pictures could apply to more than one term, but in general one of them fits one of these terms better than any of the other ones does. So that's going to be an interesting thing to see how they react to that, which is a visual labeling activity. I always think it's good if you can start with something a bit visual and a bit interactive where the learners actually have to experiment a bit. So then we go on to the next slide, and this is very similar to what the teacher was doing here, in that we're getting them to put in the guesses about what they think those terms mean, but rather than making them go through all 9 at first, I've grouped them into groups of 3, and I've sort of grouped them deliberately in terms of well, this is muscular and strength, so those 3 terms are all sort of put there together to see, to help show them that they might want to look at these things. They are related, but how are you going to differentiate between them? Now, the other thing I've done is, one thing I noticed with the original resource was I think with a lot of the learners that we might have in our cohort, we might just get a very loose guess here, or even just a I have no idea, I don't know. And I think it's good if we can avoid that to some extent. I think a lot of learners might not know exactly what to do there, and some of them probably don't want to have to put their hand up and say in front of all their peers, well, I don't get it. Some of them are quite happy to say that in front of their peers. But I thought, well, in an online resource, how could we deal with that in the resource itself? How could we give them a bit of help and a bit of encouragement? Now, what I've got over here is what's called a little help bar, and using Articulate, I've created states so that if the learner puts their mouse over that help bar, this thing will slide out, and it just says, look, you're being asked to show what you already know, and even if you don't know anything, you could surprise yourself. I'm encouraging them to think that they, to help them realize they may know more than they give themselves credit for. And I've made a very important point here. You're not graded on this. You get a chance to improve this later. You can edit this and do it better later, so don't be afraid to experiment and give it a shot. So, that's not going to guarantee that they're going to do this better than they would have done here, but I think if anything like that can make a difference, can be a great thing. So that's just using the states key in Articulate that allows you to slide something over the top based on the interaction with it. And this one, they don't need to click on it, they just need to put their mouse over it and that slide will pop out. And I think with any sort of help bar tool or anything like that, it's good if they don't have to click on it. If they can just put their mouse over something and it pops straight up and then slides back out again, that's great. It's a lot more convenient. I'm learning over time that if you can reduce the number of clicks, you may be doing people a bit of a favor. Now, one of the features to notice here is, and you may not know a lot about Articulate, but if you look over here, you'll notice here that each of these boxes is actually a text, what we call a text input box. So it's something that the user has to type into, and rather than a text box that we type and that's just presented to them. This is something that they can interact with and type in information. And they've actually been given variable labels. As soon as they type something in there, this becomes a variable in the resource. And if I just click on that variable button there, it'll pop up, and you'll see these are all my variables in the resource, and I've actually named them according to the aspect of fitness. Um, and what that basically means is whatever the learners type in here for muscular strength, I'm able to dig that back up. The thing they actually typed, I'm actually able to dig that up and put that elsewhere. I'm able to present their own information back to them. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. But it's a really useful tool in terms of that discovery learning, because we can get them to type something and then that will turn up later next to something else for them to compare or to develop. So that's a pretty cool, nifty little thing that you can do with some of these tools. So they're going to have a guess at what these mean. I've given them a bit of encouragement. So let's go over to the first one, which is muscular strength. Okay, now as I said, you'll notice here I've got a variable typed in here, and I've put the image up again just to create that reinforcement of the image to go with the term. And your guess was that this means this. Now, whatever they typed in that first box that correlates to that variable will pop up in that box when they're watching the live the live version of this. So they'll be able to see what their own guess was, and then they'll be able to compare that to the technical definition that the subject matter expert, the teacher, provided. Now, you can see here it's a very technical term. The extent to which muscles exert force by contracting against resistance. Now, in the initial mock-up I made for this, I actually just got the learners to rate how close they got to that term, and I thought, well, not many of them are going to get very close to that very technical term, number one, and number two, are they going to even understand this? And especially if they're doing this independently online without a teacher standing there with them to explain that in simple terms. What can we do to support that language issue? So what I've got here is move your mouse over the keywords in the definition to get a simpler explanation. So again, what I've done is I've used states, and there are actually transparent text boxes here over what I would consider to be the more complicated words. And what I've done is, if I just show you one, like extent, if they put their mouse over that word, if they move their mouse over that word, that pink bubble's gonna pop up and give them a simpler explanation of what extent means. The same with, for example, exert. They will see a simpler way of saying that. And as they put their mouse over it, a red underline will pop up under that word. Same with contracting. So what I've actually done is I've gone through all these very technical explanations of these aspects of fitness, and I've just pulled out anywhere from 3 to 5 words that I think might be a bit challenging, and just made them simpler just with these explanations. And I've done that for every one of them. Now, that will help them get a better understanding of what they're looking at right there, but I think we need to go a bit further. So I've actually just put in a quiz slide straight after that explanation, and they get to mix and match. Now, this is to me just one of those most important principles of any sort of learning. It's good to be shown what something means. It's good to be able to access the information if you don't know something, but then in order to remember something, you really need to do something with it, or you really need to interact with that knowledge in some way. So here they've got to mix and match these explanations and interpretations and match them up and see how they go, and then they will get to the final slide in this muscular strength series, and it will say, right, well, let's try to improve that definition you wrote. Your first guess, you've seen what you guessed, you've seen the technical interpretation, and you've been given some help with some of the more complicated words in there, and we've put a bit of an interactive sort of challenge in there for you to see if you can remember how those things match up to simpler ideas. And now let's see if you can improve your own definition. And again, we've got this help button, and I think you cannot put too many help buttons in these kind of materials. Every single learner has different levels of literacy, different levels of understanding of certain prompts, and even though they might seem simple, like here, How can you improve your definition? Try to remember and use some of those key words, and here they are: extent, exert, contract, and resistance. And I've just given them a reminder of those words that turned up in the technical one, and let's just see if you can try and use them in your improved interpretation of muscular strength. You don't have to use them, but it might be helpful in improving both your understanding but also your language level. So that's something that I've built into each one of these, and basically then that will disappear. They'll then go on to muscular endurance. Okay, so that's right. There we go. So the same thing happens with muscular endurance, which is the second term. Again, this time the variable here is remembering what they typed in that second box there, which is here. That second box there about muscular endurance, their initial guess there will pop up down here in this box, and then they can compare that to the technical definition. And again, if they want to get a bit of help, for example with the word endurance, they can get a bit of a definition, a simpler definition, even with a word like perform perhaps. And look, this is just if you're dealing with learners with varying levels of literacy, and you always are realistically, but anything from second language learners in content-based subjects to just people who have had limited exposure to formal education. These pop-up boxes that just make these complicated seeming words just that little bit more easy to understand, you really can't put enough of that in there. And the good thing is, if they do understand, or they feel that they do understand, well, they don't have to put their mouse over that, and they don't have to study the word. It's there for those people who need it. So that's good, and it's a lot easier to do this than it is to ask the teacher every time you don't understand a word. So this is a really good thing. Now, again, we quiz the word and all that sort of thing, and then we get to, after we've done 3 of these terms, we get to what I call a learning summary stage. Those 3 pictures for the 3 terms that they've done pop up. They're asked to click on each picture to see their progress so far. That each one of these that they click on will bring up a summary, and it will show them what they wrote for their initial guess, what they wrote when they tried to improve that definition, and there was another layer there that I didn't show you before, but they will also they'll also see what they wrote in terms of how that fitness aspect could be important at work. So I'll just quickly show you what I meant by that. If we're here with the core strength. Alright, they're asked to improve their interpretation, but they're also asked to see, to have a bit of a punt at why this could impact what you do at work. Now, we're talking about kids doing hard trades. Fit for work is a really important aspect of their preparation. They need to be fit and strong if they're going to go out and work in the trades, generally speaking. So in this case, we've asked them if they want to get a bit of help with that. Just think about what you're going to be doing. How will your core strength, could it be something that impacts on your ability to do your job well? If so, how? And if you don't have good core strength, what could that mean? So we're encouraging them to think beyond just the technical terms and interpretations and the principles, and apply them to their own lives and their own careers, which, context and personal relevance is really important. So then when they get down to this learning summary, as I said, they'll see their first guess, they'll see their improved definition based on a little bit of some interaction with activities and some more information, and then they'll see how that relates to their own work according to them. It's not what a teacher thinks or an expert thinks. A lot of this is just them building their own knowledge, and to me that is discovery learning. So let's just have a quick look at how that rolls out. If I preview this project, and we'll go in and we'll actually see what it's like for a learner to interact with this material, because you're looking at the actual platform that's used to build the material there. So now I'm actually going to go in and just trial it out. Now I'm not going to go through all those slides, it'll take too long, but I'll show you at least for, say, muscular strength, which is one of those key aspects, what this program, what this tool will generate in the way of a learning activity. Now it's just taking a while to load up because I've got lots of layers and lots of states built into this particular resource, and we're just about ready to go. As you can see, I've got a bit of a soundtrack that I've built in there that fades in. The video of the joggers has popped up, as well as a prompt for me to put in my name. Now it's just going to give me a bit of an outline. Notice how it greets me by name. These are just little simple things you can build in to this particular tool. Okay, so the music doesn't go forever, it just fades in and fades out, gives you a bit of a nice feel as you're coming into it, I hope. And here's our picture-based discovery activity. So as I said, the idea is we're going to try and put these labels on the relevant visual. Let's say if I think, well, there's muscles there, well, it doesn't go. But if I put it on this one, it clicks and it fits in. So, flexibility is not going to go there, flexibility is going to go here. Now I'll just quickly whip through this because I know where the answers go. It might take the learners a bit longer to fiddle around. The good thing is they can't fail this. They get as many attempts as they like. It's just putting together a sort of puzzle. There we go. Okay, now once they've got those 9 on, they can check. Good work, Jason, you've managed to link those. Good. So let's get into the guesswork stage. Now please don't worry too much about this here. This is a work in progress, the menu here, and it's messy and it's yucky. I may not even feature a menu on the final version, or I'll probably hide a lot of these slides and just put in certain scene markers or certain useful go-to parts of the resource. This is a working version at the moment, and it's not very indicative of what will be there in the end. But as you can see here, here's our 3 terms, and I've been asked to have a guess. Now, if I'm not sure what that means or what I mean, I can put my cursor over this help bar, and it's gives me that encouragement and that explanation. Take it away, and that rolls out, and I can say, well, muscular strength. Well, it's how strong my muscles are. How much you can lift or push. Right, that's the sort of thing I would expect many of our learners to write. So I'm not going to put in endurance and core strength now, just for the sake of time. So muscular strength. Now you notice up here it puts in my guess. That was just what I typed on the previous slide, and we can go and see that. Whatever I type in there, in the next slide it's going to pop up as a report on what my guess was. So it's a really nifty little tool of getting them to input their own content, and then it pops up later in the presentation. So, and the technical definition is, pops up here. Now, the extent to which muscles can exert force by contracting against resistance. Now remember I said that in terms of the language support here, what's going to happen? Well, it says move your mouse over keywords in the definition to get a simpler explanation. So let's say contracting. Okay, there's our pop-up thing that says contract is get smaller, shrink, or tighten. If I don't know what resistance is, I'll get a little bit of an explanation. If I don't know what exert means, if I don't know what extent means. So there's our language support that pops up just by moving our mouse around on there, and I think that is a really nifty tool for people with a cohort of learners who have varying levels of literacy and language expertise. So once we've done that, we can see what our guess was, we can see the technical term, we can get a bit of help with what the words actually mean, and then we're going to follow up that with a matching activity which features those technical words. So I can do this pretty quickly, so we'll just hurry our way through it. And again, they can try that as many times as they like. I'm going to get it right the first time, but they might get it a bit wrong a couple of times. And then, right, now I'm being asked to write a better definition of muscular strength based on that little bit of learning I've just done there. Again, if I don't understand, I've got this help bubble. And it's a reminder of those 4 words there that were used in the technical explanation. So now I can say um, muscular strength, the extent to which muscles, now this doesn't have to be the exact same, the extent to which muscles can exert force, and what were those words again? Even I need to use it. And contract against resistance. I'm not sure if that's exactly what the technical term was, but it's a lot more sort of specialized compared to my first guess. So let's continue. So how could this affect my performance at work? Again, I can get help if I need it, with prompts and explanations there. I need to do a lot of lifting at work, especially with tools and materials. So I need to be strong and have strong muscles. To do a lot of the most common jobs at work. Right, that's a typical sort of example. Let's go on. Now, it takes us to muscular endurance. I'm going to skip that part, and you see here my guess was, well, there's nothing there because I didn't type in a guess. But let's go down to the learning summary stage to see what it looks like, what I've done for muscular strength. Now, the 3 terms that are used in this section pop up. The first one there is muscular strength. So if I click on that, it gives me a summary of all the things that I've done for muscular strength in this activity so far. And this is just text input variables. So for muscular strength, my initial guess was that it was this. It's how strong my muscles are, how much you can lift or push. My improved definition became the extent to which muscles can exert force and contract against resistance. And I identified this as being important at work because I need to do a lot of lifting at work, blah, blah, blah. So this software actually generates a report for the learner based on their own input, and it just organizes it for them and just puts it there in a nice summary. Now it'll do this for the other ones as well. Now these will pop up blank because I didn't type anything in there. And what I'll probably build into this in a little while is actually a bit of an edit button here, which allows them to go back to the part of the resource where they initially typed it in. I wouldn't want to do it for the initial guess, but for the improved definition and the relevance to work roles, I might put in an edit button that will take them back to that box where they can actually change or type in something that they haven't typed in. But it will do that for all 3 of those terms, which was core strength, muscular endurance, and the muscular strength. So it's a very nifty little summary. Now the other reason I like this is because, well, one is it consolidates layers of learning for the learner and lumps it all together as a sort of report. But myself being the literacy teacher, I would find this very useful as an extension into literacy for writing, because these are 3 main ideas here, and I could show them how to write simple paragraphs based around this experience. So I can get Articulate to actually remember what the learners typed in here, and I could call it back up later with the learners and actually show them that they've already made a plan, and let's put that into a different kind of written report. And they'll have generated a lot more text than they would have thought that they are capable of. So that's sort of a pretty good demonstration of what I've been talking about in terms of the discovery learning, that ability for them to interact directly with the prompts, for them to improve those assumptions and those guesses and that knowledge, to compare with expert information and get language help with those explanations, and a little bit of interactive activity to get them to reinforce those terms and to actually get them to interact with them a bit. So yeah, that probably does me for now. If I close that preview, we're back into the bowels of articulate storyline. But as you can see, there's a lot we can do. And discovery learning, I love discovery learning. I love to be able to facilitate it. Look, it is a lot of work to put all that those layers of literacy support in there. But once you've come up with a template, you can actually repeat that and just change the information in them. And obviously you've got to be a little bit careful there. You don't want your material to become too repetitive. There is a difference between what I might call a reliable, predictable rhythm to a learning resource and a reliably boring and kind of heavy, overbearing sort of repetition. So that's always something you've got to balance with the learners. A bit of trial and error, a bit of trialing with learners and seeing what they make of it. So yeah, that's discovery learning, that's literacy support, and Articulate Storyline does an admirable job of helping us with that. And as you can see, I think we've come a long way from a table there and a PowerPoint there, a separate PowerPoint there. Not, as I said, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think we can achieve a lot more on the discovery learning and the language and literacy support fronts with the right tools and the right learning design. So yeah, thanks for bearing with me, and I hope you got a few little tips and gems from that. Well, maybe not so many gems, but certainly some tips. See you around.